The paradox of being nice, what it's really costing you. We're taught from a young age that being nice is a virtue. Share your toys. Don't speak out of turn. Say yes. Be agreeable. Don't upset people. Fit in. And on the surface, all of that seems good after all. Who wants to be cruel or difficult? But what if I told you that being too nice, that constantly trying to please, to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, is quietly destroying your sense of self? That this very behavior, which earns you approval and smiles, might also be the reason you feel disconnected, resentful, or even invisible. This is the paradox of being nice. It seems like a moral high ground, but often it's a survival strategy. And like all survival strategies, it comes at a cost. When you're always nice, you start to disappear. You become a mirror for other people's expectations. You stop expressing what you actually want because you're afraid it might contradict what others want from you. Slowly, your desires, your boundaries, your real opinions get buried under layers of politeness. And here's the terrifying part. After a while, you don't even know what you think anymore. You've trained yourself to be so accommodating that your own identity becomes vague, fuzzy, undefined.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But let's go deeper. Why do we become nice in the first place? Not just polite, but pathologically nice. And the kind of nice that says yes when it means no. The kind of nice that apologizes for existing. The kind of nice that feels guilt just for disappointing someone's unspoken expectation. The truth is, this kind of niceness often comes from fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being disliked. Fear of conflict. Fear that if we show who we really are, people will leave. So instead of being fully ourselves, we become what we think the world wants us to be. We trade authenticity for approval. But here's the philosophical dilemma. Can a life built on approval ever truly be your own? Can you be free if you're constantly performing for others? And what if, by being nice, you're actually being dishonest not just with others, but with yourself? Think about it. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you betray yourself. Every time you stay quiet to avoid upsetting someone, you silence your truth. Every time you smile to keep the peace but die a little inside, you widen the gap between your outer life and your inner world. Over time, that gap becomes unbearable. It turns into resentment, anxiety, even depression. You start to feel like a stranger in your own life, like you're living someone else's story. And here's where it gets even more interesting. People can feel when you're being nice out of fear. It's not real connection. It's not real intimacy. It's performance. And performance is exhausting. It breeds shallow relationships, where you're liked but not known. Where people love the mask you wear, not the soul behind it. And the tragedy is that you might spend your whole life being loved for who you're not, but never experience the love that comes from being fully, unapologetically yourself. So let's flip the script. What if being nice isn't always kind? What if it's sometimes cowardice wrapped in politeness? What if real kindness, true kindness, requires boundaries, honesty, and even conflict? Think about people you truly respect. Are they nice? Or are they real? Do they always agree? Or do they challenge you in ways that make you grow? The truth is, authenticity can feel uncomfortable. It can be messy. But it's the only path to meaningful connection and self-respect. You might be wondering, how do I know if I'm too nice? Simple. Ask yourself, how often do I say what I really mean? How often do I do things just to be liked? How often do I ignore my own needs in order to meet someone else's? These are hard questions, but they're necessary. Because until you answer them, you're not really living your life. You're living someone else's version of who you should be. In the next part, we're going to explore how this pattern of niceness forms in childhood and how it's often a brilliant, subconscious strategy for staying safe. But we'll also see why strategies that protect us in childhood can imprison us in adulthood. And most importantly, we'll begin to unravel how to reclaim our voice without becoming unkind. Because being real doesn't mean being ruthless, it means being whole. The roots of the mask, how childhood niceness becomes adult self-betrayal. We don't become nice in the self-sacrificing sense by chance. It's rarely a conscious decision. It's something we learn instinctively, subtly, and often early. When we're young, we're incredibly perceptive. Not in the logical sense, but in the emotional one. We may not understand adult dynamics, but we feel everything. We notice tension in the room. We sense when a parent is overwhelmed, when affection is conditional, when approval is earned, not given. And so, many of us adapt. We become what the environment needs us to be. We smile when we want to cry. We stay quiet when we want to scream. We behave, not because we are inherently obedient, but because we learn that approval equals safety. But this is where the mask is born. A mask of politeness, helpfulness, sweetness, a mask that earns us love, or at least keeps the peace. But what no one tells us is that the longer we wear the mask, the more we forget we're wearing it. We begin to conflate being liked with being safe. We mistake compliance for connection. And that becomes our operating system. Be good, be agreeable, don't make waves. It works for a while. It gets us through school, helps us avoid conflict, maybe even earns us praise. But eventually it starts to cost us something far greater, our inner truth. When the strategy that once protected you becomes the cage that restricts you, the nice mask is no longer a tool, it's a prison. And most of us don't even realize we're locked inside it. We just feel off. We feel frustrated, exhausted, unseen. We go through the motions of life, doing what's expected, saying yes to things we don't want, keeping everyone happy, but underneath, there's a growing sense of emptiness. A silent scream that says, "This isn't me." And here's where the betrayal begins, not of others, but of ourselves. Because every time we override our true feelings to maintain harmony, we chip away at our own integrity. We become divided. There's the self we show to the world, and the self we hide. And the more we hide, the more we start to believe that our real thoughts, our real wants, are somehow wrong. That we're wrong. So we keep playing the part, even as it erodes our sense of identity. And over time, that erosion can turn into something darker, into depression, anxiety, or a deep numbness that we can't explain. But let's pause here, because this isn't about blame. It's about understanding. The nice child is often a brilliant survivor. But that mask was intelligence. It was love. It was strategy. It got you through. But now that you're an adult, you have to ask, is it still serving you? Or is it now silencing you? Because real adulthood, real freedom begins when we start to unlearn the scripts we were handed. When we stop asking, what do people want from me? And start asking, what do I want? What do I believe? What matters to me, even if it disappoints someone else? Reclaiming your voice doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming authentic. And authenticity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Without it, relationships become transactional. Work becomes soul-draining. Life becomes a performance. So ask yourself, what parts of you did you hide to be accepted? What truths did you abandon to keep the peace? And are you still doing that now, not because it's right, but because it's familiar? These are hard questions, but they're the doorway to liberation. Because once you see the mask for what it is, you can begin to take it off, not all at once, but layer by layer. And what you'll find underneath isn't weakness or danger, it's your true self. The self that knows how to be kind without disappearing. The self that can say no with love. The self that doesn't need to be liked by everyone because it's finally being loved by you. In the next part, we'll explore the high cost of this mask in adulthood, how it affects our relationships, our careers, our choices, and how breaking the cycle doesn't mean becoming cold or selfish, but finally becoming honest. Because staying nice might earn you approval, but stepping into your truth will earn you your life. The hidden price of pleasing, how niceness sabotages your power, passion, and peace when we make niceness our default mode. We rarely stop to consider what it's actually costing us. We tell ourselves it's harmless or that it's just who we are. That being liked, being easy to work with, being the one who never complains or makes waves is the path of least resistance. But let's be honest, it's not harmless. It's not neutral. It's not without consequence. Every time you prioritize being liked over being honest, you trade a piece of your authenticity for temporary comfort. And that trade, when repeated over years, becomes devastating. Let's start with power. Real, grounded power doesn't come from force or aggression, it comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are, what you value, and what you will and will not accept. But people-pleasing severs that alignment. It makes you a shapeshifter, someone who bends to fit the expectations of others. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be everything for everyone, the less you are anything to yourself. You may be respected on the surface, but deep down, you feel powerless because your life is no longer being directed by your own values, but by the approval of others. Now consider passion. Passion is not just about romance or creativity, it's about aliveness. It's the energy that moves through us when we're living in accordance with our truth. But when we're constantly performing nice, we suppress that energy. We edit our emotions, we censor our desires, we dull our edges, and passion can't survive in that environment. It needs space, it needs voice, it needs honesty. Niceness might keep things smooth, but passion doesn't care about smooth, it cares about real. And the longer we suppress it, the more disconnected we become from our own vitality. We start to wonder where our spark went, why we feel uninspired, why nothing moves us anymore. But how could it? When you bury your truth to keep others comfortable, you bury your fire too. And then there's peace. Not the peace of avoiding conflict, but the peace of inner congruence. The kind that comes from living in integrity with yourself. People-pleasing gives you the illusion of peace, but it's really just silence. It's the absence of disruption, not the presence of harmony. Real peace comes when your inner world and outer expression are aligned. When you say what you mean. When your yes is a real yes and your no is a real no. When you're not walking on eggshells, constantly managing how others perceive you. Well, that kind of peace is rare, but it's also priceless. So ask yourself, what have you been saying yes to that's costing you your health, your dreams, your time? What have you been tolerating in the name of harmony that's quietly eating away at your sense of self? These are not just philosophical questions, they are survival-level questions. But because the longer you betray your truth, the harder it becomes to even hear it. Breaking this cycle doesn't require you to become harsh or uncaring. It requires you to become honest. And honesty, when rooted in self-respect, is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It clarifies everything. It reshapes relationships. It realigns your life. And yes, it might disappoint some people. It might even end some connections. But the ones that survive those will be based on truth, not performance. In the final part, we'll bring this journey to its philosophical and emotional peak. We'll explore what it really means to live without the need to be liked, and how that shift can unlock a life of depth, freedom, and radical authenticity. Because the goal was never to be nice. The goal is to be you. Beyond being liked, the freedom, fear, and fulfillment of living as your true self, there comes a moment quiet but life-altering when you realize being liked is no longer enough. You've built a life that looks successful, relationships that seem harmonious, a personality that is universally agreeable, and yet something's missing. That ache you feel in the background, the dull sense of disconnection, isn't because you've failed to earn approval, it's because you've succeeded at becoming who others wanted you to be, but not who you are. And that tension, the one between being liked and being real, is the birthplace of your freedom. To live as your true self is to finally stop outsourcing your worth. It's no longer about how many people approve of you, how many likes you get, how comfortable others are around you. It's about something infinitely deeper, alignment. When your thoughts, your words, and your actions begin to match, something extraordinary happens. You start to feel whole, not perfect, not always comfortable, but deeply, unmistakably yourself. And that sense of being rooted in your own truth is more valuable than any compliment, any social validation, any fleeting nod of recognition. But let's not sugarcoat it, this kind of freedom comes with fear. Because to live in truth means risking rejection. It means letting people see you not as a curated image, but as a full, complex, contradictory human being. And not everyone will like that. Some will push back. Some will leave. Some will call you selfish for finally having boundaries. Some will say you've changed when in reality, you're just returning to who you were before you learned to perform. So the question becomes, are you willing to be misunderstood in order to be free? Are you willing to let go of being the nice one if it means finally stepping into your own light? Because here's the truth, the more you live in alignment with who you really are, the more you'll attract people who resonate with that version of you. And the more you'll repel those who only like the mask. That's not a loss, it's a purification. It's your life making space for relationships, work, and purpose that are actually meant for you. And here's what they don't tell you about authenticity, it's magnetic. Not because it's flawless, but because it's real. We are starving for real. In a world that rewards performance, honesty is revolutionary. Vulnerability is power. Saying this is who I am, even if it makes you uncomfortable, is not arrogance, it's liberation. And it gives others permission to do the same. Your courage becomes a mirror. Your truth becomes a lighthouse. You don't have to become cold to stop being nice. You don't have to turn hard or cynical. You just have to become clear. Clear about what matters. Clear about what you value. Clear about who you are when no one's watching. And from that clarity kindness flows not from fear, but from strength. Not to please, but to connect. Not to be liked, but to love. So ask yourself, maybe for the first time in your life, if I stopped performing, who would I be? If I stopped trying to be liked, what would I say? What would I choose? What would I create? What kind of relationships would survive? What kind of life would emerge? Because in the end, the paradox of being nice is this: the more you chase approval, the more you lose yourself. But the more you become yourself, the less you need approval. And that's where the real freedom lives, not in being liked by everyone, but in being loved by the right ones. Not in avoiding conflict, but in embracing truth. Not in being nice, but in being you. This isn't just a video. It's a challenge to stop hiding, to start remembering, to take off the mask and trust deeply that who you are, in your rawest, realest form, is already enough.